Welcome to tonight's program. The Remarkable Journeys program is called Honshu, the Heart of Japan, and Pam Rogers is our guest tonight. From neon-lit skyscrapers to historic temples and traditional Japanese gardens, Pam Rogers and her husband Ron explored the beautiful region of Honshu, which is the largest of the four main islands of Japan. Pam will reflect on her journey and the fascinating cultures, age-old traditions, and modern wonders that she encountered in her travels. It's my pleasure to introduce this evening, Pam Rogers.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining me tonight to hear about my journey to Japan. I love to travel, and I've been fortunate enough to visit many places with my husband, Ron. He's a photographer and has a great artful eye. I'm always inspired by his images. For me, with my photos, I try and capture the overall experience. The memories, sights, sounds, smells, culture, and the people all come back to me when I go back to look at my photographs. I enjoy sharing them and telling my travel stories with others in hopes that they can feel part of the wonder that I feel when I'm on my different journeys. I hope my photos will help transport you tonight to another land. Ron and I visited Japan in 2015. We booked the travel, hotels, our train passes from home, but everything else was left completely open so we could be spontaneous. We could do as little or as much as we wanted on a daily basis on our non-travel days. This allowed us time to wander the streets, get lost, and we did get lost, and communicate the best we could with the locals without having to rush off to be somewhere on time. Because I was our travel agent and put so many hours into planning of all the little travel details, I had it in mind just how everything should be. I wasn't prepared for the beauty of the land and the people who we were about to meet. A disclaimer, I don't speak Japanese, and so please forgive any errors in my pronunciation. We visited Tokyo, Kyoto, Hiroshima, Miyajima, and Nara, all within the central part of the main island of Japan, the island of Honshu. The beauty of each region was breathtaking. We flew into Haneda, the Haneda airport, and we decided to book a room at the Haneda Royal Park Hotel. It was right in the airport, and it was just a great way to be able to relax for the evening, and then the next day set out on our journey into the world of Japan. Now, let's just get this out of the way right now. Ron claims that I know where every bathroom is in every country or every place we've ever visited. I have managed to avoid non-Western toilets whenever possible. Japan is very Western toilet friendly, and for that I'm grateful. Since I was there last, many years ago before this trip, they've gone high-tech, and many of the public toilets are also bidets. I've also avoided these, even here at home in the US. For me, it is just an unknown. So this trip, I decided to give it a go, so to speak. So it took a while to decipher all the possible selections, and I finally pushed whatever button I thought would work. It was just the newness of it all that made me kind of go, ah! And then give a few nervous giggles. And so now I'm telling you this because I want to give you some unsolicited advice. If you decide to try out a bidet for the first time, don't do it in a public restroom. There, I've said it. Let's move on. There are 23 sections in the city of Tokyo. They're called wards or special cities. We stayed in the Shinjuku ward, known for its nightlife. Also, it's day life apparently, which we found out when we got there because we were located right on the edge of the Love Hotel district. Um, it was a nice hotel. It had tiny little rooms, no closets, just what you see in this picture, plus a bathroom. But it ended up being the perfect location and a great hotel. Shinjuku has a real young vibe to it. It's very colorful, people are friendly, it's upbeat, there's music going on day and night when you're walking through. It was just kind of a real fun place to be. Even on some of the dreary days, we didn't have many, but it was still a hustling, bustling place to be. So whenever we're in a new land, or especially somewhere where we don't speak the language, it's always a challenge trying to figure out where we're going to eat. So the photo in the upper left shows a place that we had chosen, and it turned out to be good. We ate there a few times. So just something that's inviting. Sometimes we'll take a look inside, see who's in there. If there's pictures of the food, like on the windows of the menu, that a lot of times that will make our decision for us. Plastic models are great of the food, and we often would choose those because we knew pretty much what we would be getting. I even dragged one of the waiters out onto the sidewalk and pointed to what I wanted because the menu just was too hard to navigate. Here again, if there was just a little bit of English, there's someone taped to the window. Um, we would often choose that restaurant. Or a clear understanding of what that restaurant is serving. Obviously, this restaurant was serving gyoza, or Japanese pot stickers, and we weren't disappointed. I had really big concerns about the trip, about my meals, because I don't eat any fish or seafood. I ate very well though, and I lived on katsu. It's like a breaded fillet of pork or chicken, or like Wiener Schnitzel. Tempura veggies, meat dishes, rice, noodles. They serve very few salads as we know them. No, none of the big salads that we get here. Sometimes there was a small side of cabbage or coleslaw. The food was delicious, fresh, flavorful, and very satisfying. Sometimes a pop of color, and the curtains that hang down in front of the entrance to a restaurant, it just kind of drew us in. And so we would choose restaurants on that basis sometimes too. Shinjuku is a very fun-loving city, and they have these figures all throughout the city. Um, they're hanging off sides of buildings and up on roofs, and we had to make sure that we kept looking up to make sure that we didn't miss anything fun. There's a really uh, uh, a good blend of old and new in Shinjuku. And this was one of the older buildings. And this was one of our favorite places to go, Don Quixote. Nice little department store with everything. And then we have the rickshaws, but they're kind of a modernized version. And the rickshaw drivers, called shafu, they were so friendly. They tried to speak English to us. Some of them had pretty good English, and some of it not so good, but they all wanted us to ride in their rickshaw. Three young women in kimonos in a rickshaw. And then on the contrary, kind of a newer form of footwear. This was at the Sensoji Buddhist temple. So getting around is always a challenge when you don't speak the language again. And so it was very helpful that on a lot of the signs they had English lettering. It was great. And it really helped us out. And arrows are definitely universal language. But sometimes even the English language didn't help. Um, Unfamiliar with some of the pronunciations. We went to Tokyo's Tsukiji Fish Market, which is the largest in the world, and started in 1935. Now, I already told you that I don't eat fish, and so the smell isn't great to me. So we went later in the day when most of the business was done and a lot of the tourists were already gone. I don't know if you can see toward the bottom right, there's a gentleman taking a nap after a busy day. Um, so this was in a humongous warehouse. They said it was the size of 44 football fields, and they employ 60,000 people. Even though it's called a fish market, they also sell fruits and vegetables and meat. It's the largest in Japan. Each morning, hundreds of tourists visit the market, and there actually were so many tourists that they started getting in the way of market operations. In 2018, Toyoso Market opened on a man-made island in the Bay of Tokyo, and they took over the wholesale business from Tsukiji. It now has a modern facility, and it caters to tourists in addition to their regular business. They added special walkways and observation windows to help solve any issues that there were with the tourists getting in the way. So here's some fresh fish, and it can't be any fresher than that to go directly into a restaurant that lies right on the edge of the fish market. And so this was the back door of one of the restaurants. Long day for these gentlemen. Any country that we've traveled to, it always amazes me that you can always tell where the kids are. Even if this bottom photo didn't show PTA on it, I would have known it was either a library or an elementary school. The children we saw were very well dressed. They all had some kind of bags with them, some more than one. I think this one took after her mom. And then trying to figure out what things are and how to use them when you're in a different country. So we figured that this was a payphone, but had no idea. And then we went to a coffee shop. It was a very hot day, and we just wanted a nice, cool iced coffee. And on the table, there were these little containers, kind of graduated in size, and we have no idea what was in them. This smallest one that Ron has, we thought it was cream. It turned out to be, but we didn't even know how to hold them. So we visited a botanical garden and in a large park, and it was right in the middle of the hustle and bustle of Tokyo. And it was just so calm and serene within the big city. You just didn't even realize you were in a big city anymore. And then before we knew it, our time was over and we were headed to our next destination, and that was Kyoto. Kyoto is 320 miles from Tokyo. By bus, about 8 hours, and if you drive it, it's 5 hours if you know where you're going. We had decided to take the bullet train. We'd never been on it before, and it's called the Shinkansen. There are three categories of these trains, and it goes from fastest to slowest. And it's not the speed that they go, but it's the number of stops that they make. So the slowest of them is called the Kodama. It takes about 4 hours to get to Kyoto, and it stops at all of the cities, the smaller plus the major stops. The next one is the Hikari, and it has an operating speed of 199 miles per hour. These are all the same trains. 2 hours and 40 minutes to Kyoto. And then the fastest, the Nozomi, is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And we rode on the Hikari. On the left, you can see the sleek bullet train. And then at the bottom is the interior. It was clean. The seats were comfy and roomy, and there was food service the entire time, back and forth in the aisle. And it was such a comfortable ride. It was like riding on glass. It was so smooth. We were very rested when we got to our next stop. And here we were at the Kyoto train station. And as soon as we left the Kyoto station, you could feel a difference between Kyoto and Tokyo. It was less hustle and bustle. It just seemed more traditional and just slower paced. Women wore their kimonos on just for business wear. Some of the houses, the entranceways were very peaceful, inviting. This is the Gion post office. And this is a 7-Eleven. And one day we were running a little short on money, and we went and asked where we could find a bank. And an ATM, and they said, well, the 7-Eleven is down the street. And we said, you must have misunderstood us. We wanted to know where we could find an ATM, and they said the 7-Eleven. So we discovered that most of the 7-Elevens had ATMs, and that became our bank while we were in Japan. Some of the neighborhoods still don't bury their wires. We visited Teramachi Street. It's been a major road in Kyoto since the late 16th century. In 1590, the street was renewed, and there were a lot of temples scattered around Kyoto, and they were all moved to the road on the east side. And at that point, they named it Teramachi, which literally means Temple Street. The west side of the street has become filled with shops, making and selling a variety of Buddhist goods like books, art supplies, musical instruments. There's many traditional Japanese stores, stores for tourists, restaurants, really just about anything that you could want to be shopping for. It's a maze of covered passageways that stretch for almost 3 miles. I looked at everything. This was in the oldest part of Kyoto, Gion, where Memoirs of a Geisha was filmed. Here's two young women in beautiful kimonos. We actually kept running into them kind of all over the place in Kyoto. And I thought they were geisha. You know, it was kind of a preconceived notion in my head that they were geisha. And I actually even have a picture of me with them. But it turns out that they were Japanese tourists. And we found out because we walked by a tour group and the tour guide was speaking English, and we kind of snuggled up to the back of the group, and they were talking about all things Kyoto. And they mentioned that you'll see a lot of people in kimonos. If you go to the kimono shop and agree to wear their kimonos for the day, when you go into the stores to do shopping, they'll give you a big discount. So, oh well, what do I know? But anyway, I learned that they were not geisha. But they're beautiful nonetheless, and the kimonos were spectacular. Here's another type of day attire that we saw often. And this is still part of Old Town. Now this is a geisha, and you can tell, of course, by the white makeup, and they have a particular hairstyle. And then from the back, the way that they put on their makeup, there's a place in the very back that's left without any makeup on it. You can just see their skin through it. And it's supposed to make their necks look very long. And when this geisha walked past me, I turned my head to look just to make sure that she was really a geisha. So she was. We took a free tour with a local guide. When you're on your own, you miss a lot of the details and a lot of the background and things about the architecture. So with this local guide, it was great. She was giving us so much information about the area and the architecture and the customs. And she took us to this entrance of this very popular tea room, and she said there was probably a really good chance that we would see some geisha here. It was a very busy place. And she was giving us, information about tea rooms and the parties that they have. And it was really interesting. And we had been there for quite a while. And she said, well, I don't think it's going to happen here. There's a few other places we could go where I think we have a pretty good chance. So we started to leave. And right as we left, I decided to look over my shoulder. And here is a geisha going in to the tea room to work. And I think you can see the makeup on the back of her neck that I was talking about. And by the way, they don't call them geisha, they call them gaiko. And the interns are called maikos. I never knew that. The only Geico I knew was the insurance company. So, yeah, so they call them Geicos. So we're always, looking for food while we're traveling. And they explained to us about these curtains that are in the front of restaurants and a lot of shops. And they said they're put there to make you curious, they want you to wonder what's on the other side of the curtain. And we did. We opened this one. Turned out to be the back part of a restaurant, but some of the other ones were definitely more interesting. On the street, there were lots of shops that would make candy and cookies. This gentleman was making little tiny miniature cookies, and they were delicious. The entrance to some of the restaurants are also very inviting, even if they don't have the curtains in them. It just makes me want to know what's around that last curve down there. Here I got the entrance of a restaurant and also the kitchen. This was one of the restaurants we ate at. The inside was so artfully decorated, and the food down in the left-hand corner, that was my meal. It was delicious. So we always know to end up expecting the unexpected. So this woman was coming around a corner and started heading right at me on her bike with her dog. And I managed to get my camera up in time to take this photo. She didn't hit me, by the way. And we were in a store, and on the wall there was this advertisement for Zippo lighters. Zippo lighters are um, very popular and common. Um, and they're made right here in the United States, in Bradford, Pennsylvania. And I just thought it was so odd to see this advertisement for Zippo lighter that's written in English. This just reminded me of something in the US. And I took this picture just to remind me to tell you that there are vending machines everywhere, almost every block, down little alleyways, on main streets. And these show just mostly drinks, but you can have whole meals out of vending machines. And every city that we went to had vending machines out on the street. We went into a little cafe for a bite, and we looked up, and here were some old LP vinyl albums on the wall, and there was one from Disneyland. Now, Tokyo has a Disneyland, but I just thought it was odd that it was in English. Kyoto is a beautiful city, and it has a river that runs right through it. And here's a bridge. You'll notice some of those large stones are in the shape of turtles. The lower left shows a very large step. And the one up on the top, this woman was very reluctant to go. She stood there forever. Her husband was almost all the way across the river, and she was just a little hesitant to step out there. They have very ornate roof lines on a lot of the buildings. Again, we just had to make sure that we looked everywhere so we didn't miss any of the visual delights. We ran into this group of musicians, and we stood and listened to them, oh, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And, the music is so different from the music that we grew up with and are used to hearing here in the United States. And it was great because it was some of their, Japanese instruments that sound so different from what we're used to hearing. A torii gate is an entrance to a shrine. It's considered the entrance from the mundane to the sacred. Some are very large. And then just what you would consider an average torii gate, if there is an average. And we went to the Fushimi Inari Shinto Shrine. So the map on the left-hand side shows the whole park and the whole area that this takes up. There are over a thousand torii gates there. It's set in the Inariyama Mountains, and behind the shrine there are trails that go up into the mountainside for about 2.5 miles, and with over 1,000 torii gates, and with many smaller shrines also. Here's looking into a torii tunnel. And the outside of a torii tunnel. And it was a rainy day. It was raining on and off, and we were walking along, and again, just being aware of what's around you. We saw this little cat trying to get out of the rain. There are shrines and temples of all sizes everywhere. People often leave offerings at the shrine. This shrine, a bottle of water was received. This was at one of the temples. And the workers at the temple. Some of the shrines were very festive. We visited the Golden Pagoda, or also called the Golden Pavilion. It was the original building was burnt down and it was rebuilt, this one in 1955, and it's currently a Zen Buddhist temple. The top 2 floors of the exterior are completely covered in pure gold leaf, and it just, the sun just kind of sparkled off of it. And then we left for Hiroshima on a local train. This was the view from our hotel room, and you can see it's a pretty modern city. It was very vibrant, very active. It was very beautiful there. But it always wasn't that way. And this is what was left on August 6, 1945, after 8:15 a.m. The bomb detonated right above the structure that you see on the right side of the photo, which is now a memorial called the Bomb Dome, or Atom Bomb Memorial. This is a depiction of the city and what was left. You can see the shadow of the of where the bomb went off, and our hotel was actually just about 4 blocks from that shadow. Here's the bomb dome currently. There's a children's peace memorial that was built within this area to never forget, so it will never happen again. It was very sobering, and both Ron and I were very emotional that day. I'm ringing the bell here for peace at the Children's Memorial. These are thousands and thousands of origami cranes sent to the Children's Memorial from other children all over the world. We found a note attached to a bundle of cranes, and it was from a 5th grade class in Illinois. This is our cry, this is our prayer. Peace in the world. And then we turned, and this is what we saw. A rebirth, a renewal, and our hope for the future. While we were walking around, we saw all kinds of things we didn't really understand. And this was one of them. It was some type of a ceremony. We never did find out exactly what the ceremony was for. Someone tried to explain it to us, but we didn't get it. And I talked about preconceived ideas before. So this is a castle in Hiroshima. And in my mind, I guess the castle has to look like I don't know, big stone walls and gun turrets or whatever are up at the top. So my mind was opened, and now I understand that a castle does not have to be like that. This is a place that we ate. We had to. Look at the photos of all the food and drinks. I mean, how could you pass that up? Here's Ron relaxing in our hotel room. This is how we got across to Miyajima. You take a ferry, it's an island off the coast of Hiroshima. The deer roam free in Miyajima. They're considered sacred in the Shinto religion. This was our hotel. We were up on the 3rd floor. And we decided that we would stay at a traditional Japanese hotel. It's pretty sparse, but it was very comfortable and a lot roomier than our first hotel in Tokyo, that's for sure. So we took a walk, and down the way from our hotel is the Itsukushima Shrine Torii Gate. And it was built, it's also called the floating Torii Gate because it looks like it's floating there in the water. It's a very iconic structure in Japan. It's about 54 feet tall and it weighs about 60 tons. This was the downtown shopping area in Miyajima. It was closed. Miyajima is also known for making wooden rice paddles. And this is the world's largest wooden rice paddle, or they also call it a rice scoop. It's made from the wood of the zelkova tree, and it's 25 feet long and weighs about 2.5 tons. I felt like I was getting my picture taken with a celebrity. The deer at the top came up to check out my camera, see if it was something to eat. And the deer below was stalking Ron. Everywhere Ron went, the deer showed up. And I guess it was because he had a backpack. And they kept trying to sniff out the backpack to see if there was anything in there that they would like. Miyajima is also known for their steam buns. They're much like bao buns or pork buns. And this is what they look like after they have been baked. They also have a local cider. And all of the places that we visited, bicycles were definitely one of the main modes of transportation. And also rickshaws, but that's mostly for the tourists. And those guys, they work really hard. Sometimes they're pulling, well, here it's 2 adults and 2 children, but sometimes they're pulling 3 adults. So Ron wanted to go on a hike. Mount Meeson is 1,755 feet above sea level. And I thought, well, see, I'm not a hiker. I'm a good walker, especially if it's level. If it goes downhill, I'm okay too. But uphill, not so much. But I agreed to go. He had let me drag him through Teramachi Street when we were in Kyoto. So I thought it was the least I could do. It was so hot that day. But the scenery just kind of helped me get there. And it was beautiful. All these little tucked away sanctuaries along the way. So we actually took a tram up. Well, actually two sets of trams. And so we got on it and I thought, now this is my kind of hike. I like this. And here was the second one, the second tram. And if you look on the left, you can see a notch between the trees. That's where we were headed. And when we were almost up there, I turned around and looked where we had come from. And I was definitely glad we were hiking by tram. When we got off the tram, I kind of had a rude awakening because that was the rest of the hike at the top of that hill that you see. This hill is considered, or hill, mountain, is considered sacred and an object of worship since ancient times. There's Buddhist temples up near the top and an observatory at the very top. It was hard, but these guys kept us entertained along the way. They were scattered all along the route. And I knew we were almost to the top because we knew that there were some shrines nearing the top. They also had water, which was very good. I almost gave up here and went back, but I'm glad I didn't. And then we reached the top, and it was definitely worth it. It was like being up in heaven, looking down over this beautiful scenery. We stayed up there for a while and tried to cool off, and then luckily we were headed downhill most of the way. When we got back, the tide was out, and this is the same shrine that we saw in the water earlier. People can actually walk out to it when there's low tide. This 5-story pagoda was said to have been built in 1407. Our last night in Miyajima, we got a light show, and this was it. Light show by Mother Nature. Anyway, it was so beautiful, and the colors that you're seeing, these were the colors that we saw. This is not, there's no special colors added to this photograph, and it went on forever. It was an amazing evening. So we were headed back to Hiroshima to catch our train to the next place. And we met this couple. Now, my parents aren't Japanese, but this couple reminded both Ron and I of my parents. And so we had a great time talking with them. They didn't speak English and we didn't speak Japanese, but somehow we managed to communicate. I had taken some touristy postcards on the trip with me so we could give them to people and show them where we live. And so I gave this couple a postcard, and they, thanked us and they left. And a couple minutes later, we saw them over by their bags, and they were going through their bags frantically. And I thought, oh my gosh, they must have lost something, or they looked very distressed. And about 5 minutes later, we looked up and they were standing in front of us, and they gave us a rice paddle from Miyajima. Probably would have been somebody else's souvenir had we not gotten it. But we found out later that when you give someone a gift in Japan, they feel they need to gift you in return. We felt very bad about that, but it was sure nice meeting them, and we had a great time. Our last stop was in Nara. Also, the deer roam free here. And there's such beautiful animals, and it's so interesting to see them walking down the street and actually going into the stores, and they're just everywhere. And it's pretty amazing for about 20 minutes. And then they're pretty aggressive. They've learned that tourists will feed them a lot of the times, and they will just stalk you until you give them something, or someone else with food hanging out of their hand will, come by. They'll get distracted and follow them. You can see down in the right-hand corner of this photo, there's a deer among the people. We went to Todaiji, the world's largest wooden structure. At least it was until 1998, and we can't quite find out what is the actual largest structure now. But until 1998, this was the world's largest wooden structure. But before we got there, we had to walk along with the deer. This one was munching on the guy's umbrella and picking up his pocket. And they don't really even seem to care whether it's food or just something that they can chew on. This one grabbed it out of somebody's pocket. So we got to the wooden structure and we thought, wow, that is big. But we soon realized that this was the Torii Gate, or the entrance to get to the wooden structure that we were there to look at. You can see how enormous this one is from the people down at the bottom. And then here is the main attraction. It houses the largest bronze Buddha statue in the world, and it's over 49 feet tall and weighs 550 tons. This structure was finished being built in 1709. The first one, I guess you can guess, it burned. Everything seems to have burned there. Well, a lot of wooden structures. This structure was actually 30% smaller than the original structure. And here's the Buddha. And we were on our way back to Tokyo to finish up our trip. We were going on the Shinkansen, and at all of the train stations, they're so enormous. They have people there. I'm not sure if they're volunteers or paid, but they are there to help you navigate your way and get to the gate that you need to be at. Some of them speak very good English, and some of them not so much. This gentleman was pretty proficient at his English, and but he also wanted to write down the instructions so we wouldn't get lost, and it took him forever, letter by letter, to write it. We were there about 30 minutes. Luckily, we had left in plenty of time to be able to get to our train. And Ron knew that a lot of Japanese are interested in baseball, so he grabbed the piece of paper and wrote "Go Giants" on it, and this guy laughed and laughed. Anyway, we were off. And here we were at the Shinjuku station. We decided to stay in Shinjuku again since we were sort of familiar with the area. And all the way back, we kept saying, I'm just really tired of Japanese food. What do you want? When we get back, what's the first thing you're going to eat? And we both agreed a salad. We just wanted a big salad. And so our first night back in Tokyo, we were wandering the streets, and an Italian restaurant found us. And so we went in to eat Italian. The smell of an Italian restaurant, you can smell it for, blocks. Anyway, it pulled us in, and it was a small restaurant. It had all Japanese patrons. And we had a delicious meal, and we also had a little bit of entertainment. So they were using forks to eat their spaghetti. And now I know that they use forks in Japan, but I don't think they're quite as proficient as they are with their chopsticks. So they were trying to twirl the spaghetti, and the spaghetti was flying, and they were dropping their forks, and we just kind of smiled, and I felt bad because I'm sure that that's how they look at me when I'm trying to use chopsticks. The second night, we were walking around saying, okay, this is it. This is it. Where are we going to eat? And we looked over, and what did we see? A Sizzler. You know, Sizzlers have these great big salad bars, and we practically ran in the Sizzler and checked it out. And yep, sure enough, it was this huge salad bar. A lot of local cuisine also among the salad fixings, and we were in heaven. One thing I forgot to mention is that in the restaurants, if you have bags or accessories like this umbrella that we had, they have baskets next to the tables, and that's where you put it in. They don't like putting their personal belongings on the floor where people have been walking. I like that idea. So the next morning, our journey through Japan was over, and we found ourselves on the way home with only our memories and our photographs. I'd like to thank you again for joining me this evening.
And thank you. That was wonderful. We do have some questions, so I'll just jump right in.
Okay.
The first question is, was there much diversity in dress, Western versus traditional Japanese attire?
Yes, yes, there was. Anything that was more Western style, not anything, a lot of the more Western style, especially in Shinjuku, was very stylish, very short skirts. I don't know how to describe it. It was pretty amazing. But they like to dress up, and the picture of the spike heels that I showed you, that was very common. But also just jeans and you know, a blouse or a shirt for women, and jeans for men, or you know, slacks. And then on the other hand, then there are all these people in kimonos, and it was very interesting, having both of those that on an everyday basis.
And what time of year were you there, and what times of the year do you recommend?
Well, we were there in the early summer, and it was already very hot. We did get some rain, and on the rainy days, it was pretty steamy afterwards. So that was the beginning of June, and we were there for just short of a month. Um, as far as when to visit, I think around springtime. That's when the cherry blossoms bloom. I've heard it's just beautiful there, but I'm not so sure about the weather in those times of year, kind of the off season from what we would normally go. The first time I went, I think it was in late July, and it was also very hot there. But it was still beautiful, and I don't think that you need to stay away unless you can't handle the heat.
On the bullet train, did you have a sense of the actual speed, or did it seem normalized because of the efficiency?
It was so smooth that you didn't have a sense of the speed that you were going unless you turned your head and looked out and saw things just whizzing by. And then you realized how fast you were going. Otherwise, it was just like, you know, sitting in your living room or sitting in an airplane, and you just don't feel the speed. It's a very
It-
comfortable ride.
Did you visit the palace in Tokyo? Penny says the grounds are beautiful. Did you get to visit the palace in Tokyo?
Um, so I guess we did not. I'm thinking, sorry, I didn't answer right away. I was thinking we saw the palace in Kyoto, I think. and not in Tokyo.
And do the deers have enough to eat? Like any kind of food?
I don't know what they like. They seem to like anything that they can put in their mouths. And really, I have to say, they are very aggressive in places where there's a lot of tourists. They come up to you, they will not let you alone. So, yeah, they all looked very healthy.
And did you need to worry about the horns? Their antlers?
I think you're just better staying away from them, just in general. I didn't see them. I don't know if you call it goring people with the horns, but I didn't see anyone get gored. But yeah, they'll nose you to death, and they won't stop. They chew on your clothes and your purse or your bag or whatever you're carrying. Funny.
Yeah, Penny says, Pam, wonderful. Makes me want to go to Japan, go again to Japan.
Aw, that's great.
Did you sleep well while you were there?
Oh yeah,
On all
we
the
did.
kind of small rooms, big rooms?
It didn't, well, I'm a good sleeper. Actually, both Ron and I are. And we didn't have any trouble sleeping at all. We were never in a, particularly noisy room. And yeah, whether we slept on the floor, like the one hotel we showed you, or whether it was a small room or a large room, and we had both. The beds were very comfortable. And yeah, we never had any trouble sleeping.
And what made you decide on Japan?
I had been to Japan many years prior, and Ron had never been to Japan. Um, I spent very little time there the first time I was there. And we were just talking about where we'd like our next trip to be. And we always just kind of look on the internet, and somehow we were just drawn to it. And we decided that that would be the year that we would go.
Good. Okay, it looks like that's all of our questions for tonight. So,
well, thank you. And I hope I made you feel like you were in Japan for just a little bit.
You did, Pam. Thank you. I feel you really captured the beauty of it, the landscape shots and the people. It was great. In your narrative, it really made me feel like I had traveled there. So I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I also want to remind people that next month we will be back in our community meeting room. So tonight is our last Zoom Remarkable Journeys program. And we will be in our community meeting room on Thursday, August 19th at 7 p.m. And photographer Elizabeth Bush, she's going to take us to New Mexico, land of enchantment and inspiration. So she's going to show many of her visits. She's gone to Santa Fe, Taos, Arroyo Seco, and other scenic areas of New Mexico. So please join us. I hope to see you there. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.